The rain hammered against the windows as I sat in my home office, reviewing quarterly reports. It was supposed to be a quiet Thursday evening. My wife was at her book club, or so she'd said, and our 16-year-old son was at basketball practice. The house felt peaceful in that particular way it does when you're alone with your thoughts. Then I heard the front door slam. Not close, slam. The kind of sound that makes your heart skip because you know something is wrong. I was already moving toward the stairs when I heard it, a sound I'd never heard from my son before. Sobbing. Raw, gasping sobs that made my chest tighten. I found him in the kitchen, his back against the refrigerator, sliding down to the floor. His face was red and wet, his hands shaking. For a terrifying moment, I thought he'd been in an accident. Then I saw his basketball shoes by the door, mud still fresh on the soles, and I knew he'd been somewhere else entirely. What happened? I dropped to my knees beside him, gripping his shoulders. Are you hurt? Talk to me. He couldn't speak at first. Just kept shaking his head, these awful, broken sounds coming from his throat. I'd seen my son cry before, when he broke his arm at 12, when his grandfather died, but never like this. This was the sound of something breaking inside him. When he finally got the words out, I wished he hadn't. I saw Mom, he choked out. At the Riverside Apartments. She was with him. This guy. They were. He couldn't finish, but he didn't need to. My world tilted. The kitchen seemed to tilt with it. I heard my own voice, distant and hollow. When? Tonight. Practice ended early. Coach is sick. I was riding my bike home and I saw her car in the parking lot. I thought maybe she was visiting someone, so I went up to surprise her. His face crumpled again. Dad, they were kissing in the hallway. I froze. I didn't know what to do. Then they saw me. My hands clenched into fists without my permission. What happened then? The guy, his huge, Dad. He came at me and grabbed my shirt, pushed me against the wall, told me if I knew what was good for me, I'd forget what I saw. That it was none of my business. That I was just a stupid kid who didn't understand adult relationships. His voice rose, panic bleeding through. I tried to get away but he wouldn't let go. Mom just stood there watching. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Your mother didn't stop him. She did, but not at first. When she finally told him to let me go, He looked up at me, eyes red and desperate. She told me I didn't see what I thought I saw. That I was confused. Then she said if I came home and lied to you about her, she'd ground me for the rest of the school year. No phone, no computer, no basketball. She said I'd ruin everything with my lies. The cold in my stomach turned to ice, then to fire. She threatened you. The words felt like glass in my mouth. Dad, I'm sorry. I know I wasn't supposed to tell but I couldn't, I can't. The sobs took him again. I pulled my son against my chest and held him while he fell apart. Over his shoulder, I stared at the family photos on the wall. Our wedding picture. Birthday parties. Christmas mornings. 15 years of marriage that suddenly felt like a carefully constructed lie. But what burned through the shock and pain was something else entirely. They had threatened my child. The woman I'd trusted with everything, and some stranger I'd never met, had physically intimidated and emotionally manipulated my 16-year-old son to protect their affair. That was their first mistake. As I held my son and felt him shake, I made a decision. I would handle this carefully, methodically, and completely. They wanted to threaten a child to keep their secret. They were about to learn what it meant to threaten mine. Listen to me, I said quietly, pulling back to look at him. You did the right thing telling me. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. Do you understand? He nodded shakily. I need you to tell me everything. Every detail you remember. Can you do that? I didn't sleep that night. After my son finally exhausted himself and went to bed, I sat in the darkness of my office, my mind working through the situation with a clarity born of cold fury. My wife came home at 10:30, humming as she walked through the door, asking brightly if I'd eaten dinner. I told her I had. I kissed her cheek. I asked about book club. She lied to my face without hesitation, spinning some story about discussing a mystery novel, complaining about another member who talked too much. I watched her mouth move and saw a stranger. This woman who'd threatened our son, who'd stood by while some man put his hands on our child. I'm exhausted, she said, heading upstairs. Coming to bed. Soon. Got some work to finish. The moment her footsteps faded, I was moving. First, I checked our phone records online. I'd never done it before, never had a reason to. The account was in my name, and there it was, hundreds of texts and calls to a number I didn't recognize, going back 6 months. Often during school hours when our son was away. Often in the evenings when she claimed to be at various activities. I took screenshots of everything. Next, I opened our credit card statements. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to, matching the dates of her supposed book clubs and yoga classes. A monthly charge to Riverside Apartments, the same complex my son had mentioned. I checked the address against property records. Unit 304. Renter's name, Derek Walsh. I took more screenshots, then ran a basic online search on Derek Walsh. His social media was public, a mistake on his part. There he was, 32 years old, worked in sales at the same corporate park where my wife worked as an HR manager. Pictures of him at the gym, at bars, at company events. And there, buried 3 months back, a photo of a company picnic with my wife barely visible in the background, tagged at the same location. They'd met at work. I spent the next hour documenting everything I could find. Then I drafted an email to my lawyer, a family friend who'd handled our will and estate planning. The subject line was simple: need to discuss divorce proceedings urgently. When Friday morning came, I got up and made breakfast like nothing was wrong. My wife was cheerful, talking about weekend plans. Our son was quiet, pushing eggs around his plate, looking at me with questions in his eyes. I gave him a slight nod. Trust me, it said. After they both left, her to work, him to school, I made my calls. First, the lawyer. He could see me at 2 o'clock. Bring everything you have, he said gravely when I gave him the brief version. Second, my son's school counselor. I explained that he'd witnessed something traumatic and might need support. She was immediately concerned and helpful, documenting our conversation. Third, and this one hurt, I called my wife's mother. She'd always been good to me, and she deserved to hear this from me first. Something's happened, I told her. I need to tell you before this becomes public knowledge. The silence after I explained was deafening. Then, oh God, I'm so sorry. What she did to that boy, her own son, her voice broke. What do you need from me? The truth, if you know anything. And possibly testimony, if it comes to that. You'll have it. Both. That's my grandson, she threatened. My father-in-law got on the line. I taught her better than this, he said, voice rough. You protect that boy. You hear me? Whatever you need. That afternoon, my lawyer reviewed everything I'd brought. Bank statements, phone records, my son's written statement that we'd carefully documented the night before, even screenshots from Derek Walsh's social media. This is thorough, he said, looking impressed and sad at the same time. The affair itself is one thing, but the threat to your minor child, that's going to matter significantly in custody proceedings. Especially if he intimidated the boy physically. I want full custody, I said flatly. You'll likely get it, or at least primary with supervised visitation for her. Judges don't look kindly on parents who traumatize their children to hide affairs. He leaned back. Now, about this Derek Walsh. Did you want to pursue anything there? Tell me my options. Well, your wife works in HR at his company. That's a significant ethical violation, possible abuse of power dynamics depending on their professional relationship. Their employer would want to know. It could cost them both their jobs. I thought about my son, pushed against a wall by a man twice his size, my wife watching. Yes, I said. I want them to face every consequence available. Understood. I'll draft the divorce papers. We'll file Monday. In the meantime, document everything. If she threatens your son again, Call the police immediately. We may need a restraining order. That evening, I sat my son down in my office and showed him the files I'd compiled. This is what we know, I told him. This is what we can prove. Next week, things are going to happen fast. Your mother is going to be served with divorce papers. She's going to be angry. Her friend is going to face consequences too. It might get ugly. Good, he said, and there was a hardness in his young voice that broke my heart. They should pay for what they did. They will, I promised. But I need you to be strong a little longer. Can you do that? He nodded, and I saw my child becoming someone older than his years, forced into it by betrayal. That night, I lay in bed next to my wife for the last time, listening to her breathe, and felt nothing but resolve. Monday was coming. Monday morning began with terrible normalcy. My wife spent 20 minutes deciding what to wear, asked if her hair looked okay, reminded our son about his science project due Wednesday. I drank my coffee and responded in monosyllables, watching this performance of domestic tranquility with detached fascination. She had no idea what was coming. I'd arranged to work from home. After she left and our son was safely at school, I waited. My lawyer had coordinated the timing precisely. The process server would arrive at her office at 10 o'clock. Simultaneously, an email would be sent to her company's ethics hotline, complete with documented evidence of her relationship with Derek Walsh, including their violation of company fraternization policies and her position of authority in HR. At 10:15, my phone rang. My wife's number. I let it ring through to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. The fourth time, I answered. Hello. What the hell have you done? Her voice was shrill, nothing like the controlled professional tone she usually maintained. Someone just served me with divorce papers at my desk. In front of everyone. You're claiming infidelity and threatening behavior toward our son? Have you lost your mind? No, I said calmly. I found it. After our son told me what you and your boyfriend did to him Thursday night. Silence. Then, he told you. Her voice had changed, become smaller. That little. Careful, I interrupted, ice in my tone. Very careful what you say next. Because I'm recording this call, and any threat you make toward our child will be documented and added to the custody filing. I heard her breath catch. Recording? You can't. Single-party consent state. I absolutely can. Now, let me be clear. You stood by while Derek Walsh physically intimidated our 16-year-old son. Then you threatened to punish him if he told me the truth. You chose to protect your affair over your child's well-being. Those were your choices. It wasn't like that. You don't understand. Then explain it. Explain how it wasn't exactly like our son described in his written statement. The one my lawyer now has. The one that will be presented to a judge. Another pause. I could hear voices in the background, probably her co-workers reacting to the drama. Then, we need to talk about this in person. At home. Not like this. We will talk. With lawyers present. Mine suggests Wednesday at 2 o'clock at his office. You should probably bring representation. You can't keep me from my son. Actually, given what you did, I can seek emergency custody. I haven't yet, as a courtesy, but that can change. If you want any relationship with him going forward, I suggest you think very carefully about your next moves. I'm his mother. Then you should have acted like one. I hung up. The phone immediately started ringing again. I turned it off and went to my computer. Part 2 of my plan was already in motion. My wife's company took ethics violations seriously. I'd researched their policies thoroughly. Within an hour of my email to their hotline, I received a confirmation that an investigation had been opened. By noon, my lawyer received a call from the company's legal department, asking for copies of evidence relevant to their internal review. I provided everything. That afternoon, I picked up my son from school myself instead of letting him take the bus. He looked at me anxiously as he got in the car. Did you do it? It's done. She's been served. Her company is investigating. He was quiet for a moment, Then, is she angry? Very. But she can't touch you. I promise you that. When we got home, I'd already changed the locks. My lawyer had confirmed this was legal given the circumstances and my ownership of the house. I'd also installed security cameras at all entrances that morning, visible deterrents with cloud backup. At 4:30, we heard a car in the driveway. Then the sound of a key not working in the lock. Pounding on the door. Open this door right now. My wife's voice, ragged and furious. This is my house. I opened the door but kept the chain engaged. She looked wild, her professional polish completely gone. Mascara smeared, hair disheveled. Behind her, I could see Derek Walsh sitting in a car at the curb, watching. You need to leave, I said calmly. This is my home. You can't lock me out. I can, actually. You've been formally served with divorce papers that include allegations of threatening behavior toward a minor. My lawyer has advised that for our son's safety and emotional well-being, you should find alternate accommodation until the hearing. Where am I supposed to go? I looked past her to the car where Derek Walsh sat today. I imagine you'll figure something out. You've been paying for an apartment for 6 months. Her face went white. How did you? Credit card statements. Phone records. Social media. Your boyfriend's very public Instagram. Should I continue? You had no right to spy on me. I had every right to check our joint accounts and phone records under my name. And once our son came home traumatized, I had a responsibility to protect him. Speaking of which, I looked directly at Derek Walsh's car. If your friend ever comes near my son again, or this property, I'll file a police report for the assault and intimidation of a minor. The statute of limitations hasn't expired on Thursday night. It wasn't assault. He barely touched him. That's not what our son says, or what his counselor has documented, or what the security footage from that apartment complex shows. I didn't actually have footage yet, but I'd submitted a request that morning. Her face told me it existed. Now leave. If you need personal items, make a list and my lawyer will arrange supervised retrieval. I want to see my son. No. My son's voice came from behind me. I hadn't heard him approach, but there he was, face set in hard lines. I don't want to see you. Baby, please. Let me explain. You let him hurt me. Then you threatened me. There's nothing to explain. Her face crumpled, and for a moment I saw genuine anguish there. But then she pulled herself together, and what replaced the anguish was something uglier. You're turning him against me. No, I said quietly. You did that yourself. When you chose to protect your affair over your child's safety. When you made him feel like he couldn't come to his own father. Those were your choices. Now you live with the consequences. The next 48 hours moved like a controlled avalanche, gathering momentum as each piece fell into place. Wednesday morning brought the first major development. My wife was placed on administrative leave pending her company's investigation. Derek Walsh was fired outright. My lawyer called with the update. Walsh was terminated for falsifying his relationship status on employment documents and violating the fraternization policy. Your wife's situation is more complex because of her HR position, but it's not looking good for her. They found emails between them on company servers that were explicit. Good, I said flatly. There's more. Walsh apparently tried to claim the relationship was casual and your wife pursued him aggressively. He's trying to save his reputation by throwing her under the bus. I almost laughed. Honor among cheaters. That afternoon was the mediation meeting. My wife arrived with a lawyer she'd hastily retained, a young woman who looked uncomfortable from the moment she reviewed the evidence. My wife looked worse than she had Monday, wearing sunglasses indoors that didn't quite hide her puffy eyes. My lawyer laid it out cleanly. My client is seeking full physical custody of the minor child, with supervised visitation for the respondent pending psychological evaluation. The marital home remains with my client as it was owned prior to the marriage. Assets will be divided according to state law, but we're documenting that approximately $30,000 of marital funds was spent on the affair over 6 months. My wife's lawyer winced. My wife jerked like she'd been slapped. Additionally, my lawyer continued, we have documentation of threats made to the minor child, witnessed by Mrs. Chen, he caught himself. The respondent and Mr. Walsh, who physically intimidated a 16-year-old to prevent disclosure of the affair. My client disputes that characterization, her lawyer said weakly. Does your client dispute the existence of security footage from Riverside Apartments showing Mr. Walsh grabbing the minor child and pushing him against a wall? Because we've obtained that footage as of this morning. I'd actually received it an hour before the meeting. Watching it had made me physically ill, seeing that man put his hands on my son, seeing my wife stand there frozen before finally telling him to stop. But it was exactly what we needed. My wife's lawyer requested a recess. They stepped outside. When they returned 15 minutes later, my wife wouldn't look at me. My client is willing to agree to temporary custody arrangements as proposed, her lawyer said quietly. Supervised visitation, twice weekly, pending evaluation. And the financial matters. Under review. We'll need time to. No. My voice cut through the professional atmosphere. Everyone looked at me. I want something else. Something not in the proposal. My lawyer glanced at me, surprised. We hadn't discussed this. I looked directly at my wife for the first time since she'd arrived. I want you to sit down with our son and a family counselor. Not to apologize, you're way past that. But to answer his questions. To let him say what he needs to say to you. To stop hiding behind lawyers and excuses. I don't think that's, her lawyer began. It's non-negotiable, I said. You want any visitation at all? You want to eventually rebuild any relationship with him? This is where it starts. He deserves to look you in the eye and tell you how you made him feel. My wife's sunglasses came off. Her eyes were red-rimmed, devastated. Okay, she whispered. Okay. That Friday, we sat in a family counselor's office. Me, my son, my wife, and Dr. Patricia Rivera, who'd come highly recommended for family trauma. I'd met with her twice beforehand to explain the situation. She'd met with my son once. This was my wife's first session. The purpose of today, Dr. Rivera began, isn't reconciliation or forgiveness. It's communication. Your son has things he needs to say. Your role is to listen without defending, explaining, or minimizing. My wife nodded, hands twisted in her lap. Dr. Rivera looked at my son. Would you like to begin? My boy, God, I was so proud of him, sat up straight and looked at his mother. Why didn't you protect me? It was the perfect question. The only question that mattered. My wife's face crumbled. I was scared. Shocked. I didn't know what to do. That's an explanation, Dr. Rivera interrupted gently. Not listening. My wife pressed her lips together, tears streaming now. She nodded for him to continue. I saw you with him and I was confused. I didn't understand. But then he grabbed me and I was scared, Mom. Really scared. He was so much bigger than me and he was angry and threatening me. My son's voice cracked. And you just stood there. You didn't tell him to stop right away. You didn't get between us. You didn't protect me. I did stop him. After how long? 10 seconds? 20? Do you know how long that felt? And then you threatened me too. You told me I'd be punished if I told Dad. You made me feel like I was the one doing something wrong by seeing what I saw. I was trying to protect our family. No, my son said, and his voice was steel. You were protecting yourself. There's a difference. And because of that, I can't trust you anymore. I don't know if I ever will again. The silence in that office was profound. My wife was openly sobbing now, and part of me, the part that had loved her for 15 years, wanted to offer comfort. But I stayed still. This wasn't about her pain. This was about our sons. I'm so sorry, she finally whispered. You're right. You're absolutely right. I failed you. I chose wrong. I was selfish and scared and I failed you. Yeah, my son said. You did. Dr. Rivera let the moment sit. Then, what do you need from your mother now? My son thought for a long moment. Space. Time. For her to actually be sorry, not just say it. To prove she's different. And he looked at me, then back at her, for her to leave Dad alone. He didn't deserve this either. I know, my wife said. I know he didn't. After the session, my wife approached me in the parking lot while our son waited in the car. Thank you, she said, for letting that happen. For not just completely cutting me off. I didn't do it for you, I replied. I did it for him. He needed to say those things. I know. She wiped her eyes. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. Not just for getting caught. For all of it. I was selfish and stupid and I destroyed everything. Yes, I said simply. You did. Is there any chance? No. I cut her off. Whatever we had is gone. You killed it when you threatened our child. I could maybe have forgiven the affair, eventually, with enough work and therapy. But what you did to him? Never. She nodded, accepting it. He's lucky to have you. He should have had both of us. He should have had a mother who chose him first. 3 months later, I sat in the bleachers watching my son play basketball. His game had improved since everything fell apart. I think he poured his pain into it, used it to fuel himself. He'd just made a three-pointer, and I was on my feet cheering with the other parents. In the stands, a few rows down, my wife sat alone. This was part of the custody arrangement. She could attend his games, but she had to maintain distance. He'd agreed to supervised visits every other weekend now, slowly rebuilding trust. It was painful and awkward, but he was trying. That was all I could ask. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago. She'd kept her job after the investigation, but was demoted out of HR and placed on a performance improvement plan. Derek Walsh had moved to another state, his reputation in tatters. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that he was bitter about being blamed for everything, still trying to paint himself as the victim. The house was ours, mine and my son's. My wife had moved into a small apartment across town. We'd split assets, though she'd paid back the $30,000 spent on the affair as part of the settlement. My lawyer had pushed hard on that, arguing it was marital funds wasted on infidelity. But the real victory wasn't financial or legal. It was watching my son laugh with his teammates, seeing him sleep through the night again, hearing him talk about college plans without that haunted look in his eyes. After the game, they won by 12 points. My son bounded over, still high on adrenaline. Did you see that shot in the third quarter? I saw it. That was incredible. His mother approached cautiously. You played really well, she offered. Thanks, he said, not quite meeting her eyes, but not hostile either. Progress. She smiled sadly. Same time Saturday for dinner. Yeah. Dad said he'd drop me off. She glanced at me. We'd found a way to be civil, at least in front of him. Not friendly, probably never would be, but functional. See you then. After she left, my son and I walked to the car. You okay? I asked. Yeah. It's getting easier. Dr. Rivera helps. We'd kept seeing the counselor, both together and separately. She told me in our last private session that my son was processing the trauma remarkably well, that having one parent who'd unequivocally chosen him made all the difference. Hey Dad, he said as we drove home. I've been thinking about something. What's that? I want to talk to some of my friends about what happened. Not all the details, but some of them know Mom and Dad got divorced, but they don't know why. And I think I need to tell them. Is that okay? I pulled over into a parking lot and turned to face him. You can tell whoever you want, whenever you're ready. What happened to you wasn't your fault, and you don't have to carry it in secret. I just don't want people to think less of Mom. Even after everything, she's still my mom. The maturity of that statement nearly broke me. This kid, who'd been betrayed by his mother and threatened into silence, was still trying to protect her reputation. You're a better person than most adults I know, I said roughly. I learned from you, he replied, and I had to look away before he saw me tear up. That night, after dinner and homework, we sat on the couch watching a game on TV. During a commercial, he said, "Thank you for believing me. That night when I told you. Some dads wouldn't have. Some dads are idiots. You're my son. I'll always believe you. I'll always protect you. I know. That's why I told you, even though I was scared. Because I knew you'd make it right." And I had. Not perfectly. There was no perfect way to handle your wife's infidelity and betrayal. But I'd done what mattered. I'd chosen my son first, every single time. I'd gathered the evidence, protected him legally, made sure he had support, and showed him that he deserved better than what he'd been given. The affair hadn't just cost my wife her marriage. It had cost her job security, her reputation, her relationship with her son, and her sense of self. Derek Walsh had lost even more, his career, his standing, and from what I'd heard, his engagement to someone else who'd left him after finding out about the affair. Were those consequences too harsh? Some people thought so. My wife's mother, despite supporting us, had mentioned once that perhaps public humiliation was excessive. But I didn't seek public humiliation. I sought accountability. I documented facts and let natural consequences follow. If their actions brought shame, that was their doing, not mine. My son had asked me once if I hated his mother. I told him the truth. I didn't hate her. I felt sorry for her. She'd made choices that destroyed her family for a relationship that wasn't even real, wasn't built on anything but lies and sneaking around. And when confronted with the consequences, her affair partner had turned on her immediately. But mostly, I felt nothing for her anymore. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. The woman I'd married would never have let someone hurt our child. This new person, she had to live with what she'd done. As for me and my son, we were building something new. A home that was honest, safe, and built on trust. He was thriving, his grades improved, he'd made new friends, he was even talking to a girl he liked. The trauma would leave scars, but Dr. Rivera assured us that with continued support, he'd be okay. 2 weeks later, I got a text from my wife. He told me he loves me today. At dinner. First time since everything happened. I wanted you to know. Thank you for not turning him against me. I replied, I never tried to turn him against you. I just told him the truth and let him decide how to feel about it. I'm glad you're rebuilding. He needs a mother who chooses him first. Her response took several minutes. I do now. I promise. It took losing everything to understand what mattered. I'm working on being the mother he deserves. Good, I typed back. Keep working. Would she succeed? I didn't know. That was between her and our son. My job was to provide stability, support, and a home where he felt safe. Her job was to earn back his trust through consistent action over time. Looking back, some people asked if I'd been too harsh, too calculating in how I'd handled everything. My answer was always the same. They threatened my child. They physically intimidated him and emotionally manipulated him to hide their wrongdoing. The moment they did that, they forfeited any right to gentle handling. I'd protected my son the way any parent should, fiercely, completely, without hesitation. I'd gathered evidence, sought legal counsel, and ensured consequences followed actions. I'd supported him emotionally, gotten him professional help, and made sure he knew none of it was his fault. And in doing so, I taught him something valuable, that he deserved to be protected, that adults should face consequences for hurting children, and that sometimes the right thing to do is the hard thing. 3 months became 6, then a year. My son thrived. His relationship with his mother slowly improved, built on new foundations of honesty. She attended his games, took him to dinner, even came to his band concerts. It would never be what it was, but it was something. As for me, I focused on being the father he needed. We had movie nights and terrible cooking experiments. We talked about girls and grades and what he wanted to study in college. We went to therapy together when needed, separately when that was better. And every day, I was grateful he'd trusted me enough to tell the truth that rainy night. Because in protecting him, I'd protected us both. In choosing him first, I'd shown him what love actually looked like, not the selfish, destructive kind his mother had modeled, but the kind that sacrifices, that stands firm, that says you matter more than my comfort. That was the real victory. Not the divorce settlement or the consequences that befell his mother and her affair partner. The victory was in my son's healing, in his trust, in the life we were building together. They'd tried to silence him to protect themselves. Instead, his truth had set us both free.